Hey guys, long time no see. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Justice, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. I have been gone away from the channel for a month-long hiatus so I could get some personal stuff with my life together a little bit better, and today I wanted to do a more chill video with you guys and just talk about some of my favorite movies and just have all-around positive vibes here. And just to throw it out there too, this list is filled with movies that I like, and you may have movies that you think that should be my favorites, and that's completely okay. We all have different opinions at the end of the day, and movies talk to us in different ways. And another thing I want to mention too before jumping into this is that these movies aren't going to be in any particular order, because depending on the day of the week or at any given time, they're going to be in different slots, and these movies are like my fucking children. I don't think I could put them in a top 10 type list where I could like break them down from like which one's the best to the greatest of all time, because again, it would depend on the day of the week, man. It just depends on my mood. These are all just movies that I genuinely love. So with that all out of the way, let's talk about these movies. Now, the first film that I want to talk about today is Hellbound Hellraiser 2. Confined to a mental hospital, Kirsty insists her supposedly dead father is stuck in hell, controlled by sadomasochistic demons after being betrayed by his evil occult-obsessed wife, Julia. Few believe Kirsty except Dr. Chenard. So when Kirsty and fellow patient Tiffany head to hell for a rescue, Chenard and Julia are close behind. If you noticed, I didn't put Hellraiser 1 on this list, I put Hellraiser 2. I do not know if that's sacrilegious or blasphemous by any means, but I really love this movie. There's been so many times where I'll just completely skip watching the first movie and I just go directly to this one. I think it is so much fun, a lot of the choices that they make here, and there's a lot of things they do here that I wish would be touched upon in more of the Hellraiser movies. I mean, we have 10 of them. I don't know why it's so fucking hard to make more than just a couple good ones, man. Not only do we get more Pinhead screen time in this entry though, we also get way more screen time with Julia, and for this being her second entry in the franchise and her final one, I am so glad that she is such a mainstay villain of the story. In fact, I would even go as far to say she is one of the main villains of this movie, and I just love how twisted her character is throughout this entire movie as she is going after her stepdaughter in hell through this huge labyrinth. And speaking of that labyrinth, it is gorgeous and it's super eerie and creepy, and the set design in this movie is just phenomenal and peak 80s too, especially when you see Leviathan. And the special effects in this movie, man, like they fucking slap so hard, especially with like all of the skin peeling off scenes and just how sick and twisted Pinhead can get. And I do think I enjoy these entries where Pinhead is more towards the forefront, but it's almost more fun when you have these other villains popping in that are actually more of a villain to the story than Pinhead himself. It's something that even you see in the first movie where you have Julia and Frank more or less being the true villains of the story over Pinhead. And I think that's where these movies do the best, is when they aren't just focused on shoving Pinhead into the story so that he can be the main character of the film, because he doesn't need to be the main character, man. He's a good enough character. We already know that. Just look at his design alone. And this movie proves that he doesn't always need to be the main character of the film, because you can just have these really fucked up bastards that are opening the lament configuration and doing all these really sick and twisted things. And God, I wish Julia was in more entries than this one, but I absolutely love this movie. It is easily my favorite of the franchise. I grew up watching it as a kid on VHS. My mom showed it to me because she was a huge Pinhead fan, so of course there is a lot of nostalgia for this movie and me. But to talk about a more recent movie, let's move on to 2022's Pearl. Trapped on an isolated farm, Pearl must tend to her ailing father under the watch of her mother, lusting for the glamorous life she's seen in movies. Pearl's temptations and repressions ultimately end up colliding in the film. Again, this might be blasphemous, but when X came out, I went and saw that movie in theaters, and I'm not the biggest fan of it. It kind of bored the socks off of me, if I'm being completely honest. There were parts I liked, but overall, it was just a very movie to me. So when I heard Pearl was coming out, I waited for it to come to streaming before I decided to watch it, and that is the biggest mistake I ever fucking made, man. I could cuss out past Justice and be like, dude, no, 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 no. Just go watch Pearl. It is nothing like X. This movie is just so visually stunning, and I love the prequel aspect of it. A lot of franchises that do prequel films don't do a very good job with them, and they feed you a lot of information you really don't need. This movie, I don't think, falls into that pitfall at all. It literally just shows you Pearl younger and becoming a killer, and they don't really touch upon like a whole bunch of the stuff that was in the X film. And even some of the stuff in this movie made me appreciate X better, because you get to see through some of Pearl's bullshit from when she was an old woman in that movie in this film. And two, this movie is just absolutely stunning. It is so goddamn colorful and bright. Like, the color palette in this movie is just absolutely like breathtaking. And then on top of it too, you have Mia Goth acting her fucking ass off and totally going into this unhinged role. It is just so much fun to watch, especially her monologue that you have towards the end of the film. It goes on for so freaking long, and I don't think most actors can pull it off and keep it interesting, but every time I watch this movie, I just feel so engrossed in her performance. And then when the camera flips and you see how her sister-in-law is finally reacting to this like unbroken shot, and like her complete like horror and like what the fuck of it all from hearing like Pearl's inner fucked up thoughts out loud for the first time, it's just inherently kind of hilarious. And that's something else I love about this movie, is even with as like fucked up and like twisted it is, you have all these moments that are very easily kind of comedic and kind of campy in it without leaning too far into comedy or camp. It's just a really good movie and a masterclass in how you should do a horror prequel. But enough about Pearl, because next up on the list is 2017's Mother, which follows a young woman who spends the days renovating the Victorian mansion her and her husband live in on the countryside when a stranger knocks on the door. He becomes an unexpected guest in their home, and later his wife and two children also arrive to make themselves welcome. Terror soon strikes when the wife tries to figure out why her husband is so seemingly friendly and accommodating to everyone but her. So I am not the biggest fan of like disturbing movies typically that are just trying to be disturbing, and I'm also not the biggest fan of art house movies usually, but the acting in this movie is so freaking good, and it is a very, very art house film. It is so interesting every single time I watch this movie and get all of the different metaphors and meanings behind every little scene and character in it. And I do think Darren Aronofsky did a fantastic job with this movie. I think Jennifer Lawrence, this is easily one of her best performances she has ever given. It is extremely heartbreaking watching her throughout this entire movie, and it is extremely believable as well. The only thing I'd have to say is, if you haven't seen this movie yet, I would be very weary, and I would give a trigger warning if you're sensitive, because there are some really messed up scenes in it, especially when you get towards the end of the film, that might not sit the best with you, because I have a friend that's pretty sensitive, and back in high school when this movie came out, her and I watched it, and it ended up being too much for her, and she had to tap out, and I did not blame her at all, because I get it, man. I've seen a lot of these movies, so I'm a little bit desensitized. So sometimes I forget what isn't effective for like a normie, for a lack of a better word. But this is a movie that I very much enjoy. Even dweeby little high school Justice did like a 8-page essay on like all the metaphors in this movie and like the filming techniques to talk about like how they fully put you into the shoes of the anxiety that Jennifer Lawrence is facing in this movie, and then all of the religious allegories and like the hateful stuff towards religion in this movie. It's a very fascinating watch, and I don't know, I just really like this movie. And if you haven't seen it yet and you're not too sensitive or you're interested, then go watch it. Like, fully recommended. I don't think people talk about this one enough. But the next movie we're going to talk about today is Last Night in Soho, which follows an aspiring fashion designer who is mysteriously able to enter the 1960s in her dreams, where she encounters a dazzling wannabe singer. However, the glamour is not all it appears to be, and the dreams of the past start to crack and splinter into something far darker in the present. When this movie came out, I shit you not, I blasted the soundtrack for this entire movie for at least a fucking year after the fact. They still pop up in my shuffle, and I can't help myself but not to skip them, especially the songs that Anya Taylor-Joy sang in this movie. Like, if that woman wasn't an actor and a model and all the other awesome things that she's doing, I would say delve into a music career, lady, because you have a really, really beautiful voice. And when I first started this channel, if you saw those earliest videos of mine, and if you haven't, maybe avoid them. They're a little cringe now, honestly. I did a couple that had Anya Taylor-Joy in them, and I absolutely gushed about her, and that's because she's easily one of my favorite actresses. And this fully takes the cake for my all-time favorite role of hers. I think she embodies Sandy so well. She is the woman that Eloise is seeing in the past, only to see this strange murder that's happening back then. And I don't want to get into any details because I don't want to spoil it. Another thing too is, even though the twist is kind of predictable, especially if you're like a seasoned horror fan, I still think it is an extremely fun watch because it's really well acted, really well shot. The choreography is just stunning. There is so many aspects of this movie that are just so beautiful, and I am so glad this is one I saw in theaters. It was actually one of mine and my boyfriend's first dates. We went and saw this at the movies, and we were the only two people in that movie theater, and that just fully engrossed me into it that much more because I got the best seating, like right in the middle of that fucking theater, and just got to see it on the big screen with no interruptions. And that might be a part of the reason I love this movie that much more too. But good God, it is such a good one, and it makes me so sad that it flopped in the box office. I do think a big part of that was because this came out shortly after the pandemic. But if you haven't seen this, again, go watch it, man. This is probably the biggest recommend I have on this list. And before I end up spending the rest of this video talking about Last Night in Soho, I should probably just move on to my next favorite film. And coming up next on the list would be Child's Play 1988. After being gunned down by the police, dying murderer Charles Lee Ray uses black magic to put his soul inside a doll named Chucky, which mother Karen Barkley then buys for her young son Andy. When Chucky kills Andy's babysitter, the boy realizes the doll is alive and tries to warn people, but he's then institutionalized. Now Karen must convince the detective of the murderous doll's intentions before Andy becomes Chucky's next victim. If you've seen some of my reaction videos to horror hot takes, I've been pretty blatant that I am a huge Chucky fan. It is one of my all-time favorite horror franchises, and for me it's like top 3 of my favorites, and it's because this franchise is just so interconnected, and I love these movies so much. I love Don Mancini, the writer and director for most of these films. I think that he is just so phenomenal, and none of it would have been possible if it wasn't for this first entry. And a huge thing that I love about it all is not only do we have Chucky, who's running around being this little fucking menace throughout the film, we have this really great family story between both Andy and his mother. I think they are such a believable mother-son duo throughout the entire film. Andy, who is, by the way, amazing child actor, like, and fucking adorable in that movie. Like, even the opening sequence of him bringing like his mother breakfast in bed, just so goddamn cute. He was such an innocent little kid before that little fucking doll decided to ruin his whole fucking life. But their whole relationship is just super adorable. And then a lot of the big iconic beats of the film still hit and are very entertaining even upon rewatches, like Karen discovering that Chucky has no batteries and that he's possessed, or even all the fake outs at the end of the movie as they're trying to kill off Chucky. This is one that could alternate on my list very easily because I just love the Child's Play franchise so much, man. Sometimes Child's Play 1 is my favorite, other times Child's Play 2 is my favorite, then other times Bride of Chucky is my favorite because Jennifer Tilly, come the fuck on, man. But this movie right now, at least, is going to be the one that I pick. Coming up is another one of my top 3 franchises, and that would be Scream. In the small town of Woodsboro, California, a masked killer known as Ghostface begins murdering high school students, and a group of friends must use their knowledge of horror movies to unmask the killer. This movie is peak 90s cinema. It is very much a love letter to the horror genre, and you already fucking know that if you've seen that movie, or even if you've heard a Scream, you know that, and it is such a fun watch. I love the characters. Again, it's another movie where you can latch onto so many of the characters and just grow to love them so much, especially when you are seeing them in this first entry versus where they end up in the later movies. It is very enjoyable getting that intimate experience with each one as you see them grow throughout the years. But in this movie, I think this is where they're at their best. At this point, Sydney's character hasn't been chased by a killer before, so she's extremely new to trying to outrun one of these bastards, and it gives it this little more of a creepy edge to it of will she, won't she survive, only for her to rise to the occasion and whoop some ass. And in this entry, this is where Dewey is at his most doofiest in the movie, and I think he's so freaking adorable, man. And then 2, Courtney Cox as Gail, she's the final girl we deserve in one of these movies, but I don't think we're ever gonna get her to be that, man. I think that Gail is just too controversial to truly want to take on a final girl role, if you know what I mean. This movie is so much fun, and there is nothing I can say about it that hasn't been said already. It is what made meta horror a huge thing in the first place. It completely changed the horror landscape in the 90s and made it to where a whole bunch of films would be possible that would have never existed before Scream. I mean, fuck, I just mentioned Chucky. Bride of Chucky wouldn't even look anything like it does now if it wasn't for the fact that Scream came out, man. Coming up next is the only foreign film I'm going to have on this list, and it would be Battle Royale. 42 ninth graders are sent to a deserted island. They are given a map, food, and various weapons. An explosive collar is fitted around their neck, and if they break a rule, the collar explodes. Their mission is to kill each other and be the last one standing. The last survivor is allowed to leave the island. If there is more than one survivor by the end of the games, the collars explode and kill them all. If you've watched my videos for a while and you've seen my stack of bullshit here, you'll know that one sec that boom, I have the Battle Royale book on my set pretty much at all fucking times, man. This book was a huge part of my high school experience. I was obsessed with the Hunger Games, and once I got done reading it, I just fell in love with the whole plot device of kids killing kids, or this whole arena style of people fighting to the death. It's a very terrifying concept, and in this one I think it's even more terrifying than Hunger Games, because at least in Hunger Games, for the most part, you don't know anyone else that you are going to kill. You have only met them once you have gone to the Capitol. The only person that you do know is the one that came from your district, but you don't have these long-time intimate relationships with them. Versus in fucking Battle Royale, these are your classmates. These are the people that you have gone to school with, sometimes for years since you were a little kid, people that you have grown up with, and you are expected to kill them so that you can be the only one to survive. And they play into that so damn well in this movie, and it is extremely sad, some of the sequences you have in this film. Another thing too that I think works really well in this film child's favor. Again, in the Hunger Games, you really only follow Katniss throughout the movie. You don't get to get glimpses of all the other characters throughout, whereas this one, yes, it does have its main characters in Shuya and Noriko, but you also get flashes to other characters on the island and what they are doing to survive, or what they're doing to try to be the ones that win. And some of the scenes in this movie are easily some of the most iconic to me in horror history. I mean, just look at that lighthouse scene. That scene is just so nerve-wrenching, and it's a huge gut punch by the time you get to the end of it. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, and if you haven't, I am not giving any more details because you gotta watch it, man. It is so freaking good. But I love this movie, and if you can get past subtitles, you should fully watch it, especially if you were a fan of the Hunger Games. This movie is so freaking good, and it pushes a little more into the horror territory in this film because it is more bloody, it is more gruesome, and I would even say that Quentin Tarantino got some ideas for things that he did in Kill Bill from this movie, especially how he handles blood in Kill Bill. I mean, even one of the actresses that's in this movie ended up in Kill Bill, if that says anything. But coming up next, and you guys have heard me talk about this movie for like a month if you've been watching the channel, is the original Carrie from 1976. Carrie White's a shy, friendless teenage girl who is sheltered by her domineering religious mother. She unleashes her telekinetic powers after being humiliated by her classmates at her senior prom, leading to a horrifying and tragic climax. I'm not going to spend too long dwelling on Carrie because I made an entire video about this movie and the whole franchise. It is my all-time favorite Stephen King adaptation. It is my all-time favorite Stephen King novel. Furthermore, again, I usually have this Carrie book on my set, if that says anything. But Sissy Spacek totally owns the role of Carrie, and it is super heartbreaking watching how everybody mistreats her, and you just want this girl to catch a fucking break the entire movie. And yes, she may be the big bad monster of the film, but you can't help but feel sorry for her and pity her for just how hellish her entire life has been, because she goes home to get abused by her mother only to go to school and get further abused by her classmates. Like, there's no way Carrie can ever feel happy, and then she has these alien feelings as she's starting to experience these telekinetic powers, and on top of it, hitting puberty and having her first period. It's all extremely heartbreaking how confusing all of it is for her, and her not having an outlet to be able to express. The ultimate climax, though, and the revenge that she does end up getting is, again, one of the most iconic sequences in horror history. I would say the final 30 minutes of that movie have some of the most iconic scenes in horror history. It's a really goddamn good movie, and again, I'm not gonna go too much into it because I've just talked so much about this movie, man. I don't think I really need to here, so we'll just move on to the next thing. And next up will be 1974's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. 5 friends head out to rural Texas to visit the grave of a grandfather. On the way, they stumble across what appears to be a deserted home, only to discover something sinister within. Someone armed with a chainsaw. This movie is the epitome of 70s sleaze, hands down. Every time I watch this movie, it's so grimy and gross and dirty, and there is no way that they would ever be able to, in any sequel or remake they make of this franchise, to fully capture that feeling again, because of the filming conditions and all the pressures the actors were under. Can't be repeated, and they very well shouldn't be repeated. It sounds like filming this movie was fucking hell for everyone involved, but it is such a goddamn good movie, especially for how old it is. It is still terrifying to this day and just nerve-wracking the entire time, especially when you have Leatherface running around and killing everyone, and then the final act of him chasing after Sally going on for a good 30 or 40 minutes of her just screaming, getting captured, running, screaming, and then getting captured again. Just how frantic Marilyn Burns gets there as she's running around is super believable and horrifying, and so many of the shots in this movie too are just instantly iconic. The whole dinner scene with Leatherface and Sally being tied up and seeing all this horrific stuff with all the really cool close-up shots, or even the final sequence of her in the truck, incredibly broken and laughing, and you can see that she's never going to be the same again after this. And yes, she survived the movie, she survived this massacre, and she's our final girl, but you don't feel good about it because you see her and you just see this incredibly broken human, and you highly doubt that she's ever going to truly be able to move on from the horrific events that have happened in this movie. And that's something that I truly love about this one, is because in most other horror franchises, our final girls are pretty much unscathed by the end of the film. They end up being okay and being able to set all the trauma to the side, versus this one is a lot more of a realistic depiction of how you would feel being in such a fucked up situation. I genuinely wish this franchise could have kept up the momentum as well, because as much as I love this movie, most of the other entries in this franchise are either forgettable or just total shit. There's no other way to really put it, man. But this one, it does stand the test of time, and it is a genuinely good movie. Don't let the age scare you away from watching it if you haven't seen this one yet. And the last one that I'm going to talk about on this list today is 1986's The Fly. When scientist Seth Brundle completes his teleportation device, he decides to test its abilities on himself. Unbeknownst to him, a housefly slips in during the process. Initially, Brundle appears to have undergone a successful teleportation, but the fly's cells begin to take over his body. As he becomes more fly-like, Brundle's girlfriend, Veronica, is horrified as the person she once loved morphs into a monster. This remake of The Fly is perhaps the best remake of all time. I think this is a masterclass in how you should do a remake, where you take the idea of a film and then you do your own play on it, and it bettered everything from the original 50s film. Here, it is a massively tragic love story at the core of this film, and the chemistry between both Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis is extremely believable as you see the two of them fall in love, only for Seth to ultimately morph into this grotesque monster. And speaking of that morph, it is so damn gross. The special effects in this have aged extraordinarily well, and it's a Cronenberg movie. What do you expect, man? But as the scientist is morphing into this fly, there's a lot of these ooey gooey effects as you see his body like start to fall apart and deteriorate into this like human fly hybrid. It's super grotesque and disgusting. There's no other way to put it, man. And this movie too is just so smartly written. It is so ahead of its time. The subtext is very close to just being text here, about this being like a pro-abortion tale essentially, with this whole subplot they have in the film, and it's just a really good movie. You guys should check it out. It is such a goddamn shame this movie didn't win a shit ton of awards at the Oscars the year that this came out, because it is such a good movie. But again, it's horror movies. Of course, the Oscars can't take horror seriously, except for like every couple of years, apparently. What I will give them credit for is apparently this did win an award for Best Special Effects, so at least they did good there at bare minimum. But anyways, that's gonna wrap up this video. This has been my top 10 favorite horror movies. You guys should let me know what some of your favorite horror movies are down below. I would love to hear them. And if you guys want to see more videos in the future just like this, I would love if you click that subscribe button. I cover everything and anything horror on the channel. And next up around here is the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. I'm getting ready to get that out for you guys, so stay tuned for that if that sounds interesting to you. But anyways, with that all out of the way, this has been Justice, and I really hope to catch y'all on the next one. Take care.